Hello, my lovely book lovers. Welcome back to Procrastinate with Books. Now, if you know me, I talk about books most of my time, and for that very reason, I feel it very essential to actually share a quick few guide around how you figure out what works best for you when it comes to books. And that is why I'll be giving you a detailed breakup of what kind of categorization the books actually have. Now, I do want to say it loud out here that though the categorization that I'll be discussing in here are specifically about books, the same can be implied on any kind of movies too. And when you actually say categorization, the first few things that come to your mind would be genres, age categories, themes, plot, scenes, etc. So we'll be going through them each one by one into a detailed site. The first category in here is genres, and when I talk about genres, I want you to think them as a golden compass that helps you navigate in this vast sea of books, gradually navigating you towards the books and stories that resonate well with you and help you find what actually works the best for you. Now, genres are primarily categorized into four different categories, which are then further divided into subgenres, primarily naming them as dramas, poetry, fiction, and non-fiction. Now, dramas usually use their storytelling to be narrated in form of dialogues using character interactions, screenplays, and they are usually used to display human emotions, conflicting dilemmas that one goes through, and a lot of different experiences that the human is facing. Dramas are further categorized either as a tragedy or as a comedy. So, based on what kind of preference do you have for reading a drama, I think you will be able to get most of the dramas to be picked up from the Shakespeare wholesome collection. But if you're actually looking for something in the modern age world build up setup or even a modern writing perspective, then I think the eighth book in the Harry Potter series, the Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, was initially written as a drama plot and was even done for multiple stage plays in United Kingdom, and later on the whole adaptation into the book was done. So I think if you really enjoy that kind of a read, I think in a modern writing style, I think Harry Potter would go. And if you want to go back in the days from tragedy perspective and comedy perspective, I think Shakespeare is your best guide. Our next genre, fiction, is a very broad category and is further categorized into several subgenres based on their traits. And as the name suggests, it's pretty self explanatory that it does not inspire from any kind of a real life story. In this case, the author uses its imagination to do the storytelling part for them, and that's how fictions basically work. Now, let me start off by some really common ones, which is general fiction, which includes literary fiction, women's fiction, and any other style of writing. Metafiction is something that is really rising up these days. A good example of metafiction would be a story based on a writer who's trying to write a book, and that would fit really well from metafiction perspective. Women's fiction basically revolve around women female protagonist stories that are based out in a real world scenario. Then we have the fictional genre classification based on timelines. One is the historical fiction, which is, as the name suggests, based on historical events, data, or anything that was very popular in our historic times. The other one is contemporary fiction, which is mainly a story based out in the modern world or present world that we're currently living. Then we have mystery, which basically has a general mystery where there is a supportedly mystery revolving around normal people's life and they're trying to solve it by themselves. The next one is a detective mystery, for example, Agatha Christie books, where there is an incident happening and there is a detective present who is actually trying to solve a particular mystery. There is also crime mystery, cozy mystery. Cozy mysteries are basically murder mysteries revolving a really cozy setup, usually around the bakeries, and someone is dead and they are instead convicted of doing that murder, and so they try to solve the mystery before the police can actually convict them for that particular case. And those are some really generic examples of cozy mysteries. You also have noir mysteries, which are a relatively darker mysteries if it talk about the literary sense. Within the thriller category, there are further diversifications, especially from a supernatural point of view, where there are ghosts present into your story and they are trying to, somehow influence the decisions that you are making in real life. And then the thriller part is acted upon it. Then you also have psychological thrillers, which basically around revolving around psycho people who have lost their mental stability and they are now going around killing people or asking other people to kidnap and kill them for certain reasons, and behavioral patterns that are basically influenced by things that have happened in their past. Then there are several other shorter categories such as legal categories. A good example of it would be the Inheritance series, which sadly I couldn't respond well to it, but I think a lot many people really enjoyed it, so you might want to check that out. And apart from that, I think there are medical thrillers as well as forensic thrillers. Forensic thrillers basically involve a lot of mortuary work, and those are the story revolving around in thrillers. Up next, we have the science fiction category. I think this is another stream that is really evolving day by day, especially the dystopian section of it is in a very fast stream track right now. There are also other subcategories when I talk about science fiction. I think post apocalyptic and apocalyptic cycles, basically when the world is ending and what happens once the world has already ended. Think about Resident Evil, and those are the movies that would actually fit around in post-apocalyptic and apocalyptic scenarios. And similarly, there are various books that are there. So if you like those kind of movies, you might want to try out similar books. But even if you leave these aside, I think there is still space opera and cyberpunk kind of books that still fall into the sci-fi category. And especially from space opera perspective, I think Christopher Coloni recently came out with a book around noise related to certain planet. I think the book's name was Fractal Noise, and that was another book in this category that if you're interested, give it a try. Then we have fantasy, my favorite genre, which is further categorized into multiple subplots and theme tropes. But one of the most important ones is magical realism, which is one of my favorite ones as well. These are the ones where within a fantasy world build up, you do have certain elements of magical reality into it. A good example of that would be the Night Circus. Then, keeping magical realism aside, I think you also have urban fantasies and epic fantasies. Epic fantasies basically revolving around the plot lines of highly historical timelines such as Game of Thrones, and urban fantasies would be somewhere around a relatively modern world build up and also a relatively modern language that is used in writing that story. And apart from these, you do have mythical fantasies as well as dark fantasy, which are very prominent to the name that they have and are pretty much self explanatory. Up next, romance, one of the most widely read category in the fiction genre itself, and this is also one of the category that I sadly don't resonate much with. You do have certain categories further divided into the romance section. One of them is holiday romances, which basically has a storyline set up around a specific festival or holiday season, maybe New Year, Halloween, Christmas, etc., spring breaks too, or something happening around the summer vacation. Then you do have billionaire romances, which involves a billionaire and a guy or girl falling for him and then things getting dirty. Sometimes they do have involvement of mafia as well into it. So those are the angles that you enjoy. You can check out the billionaires romance category. You also have smutty romances, which have a whole specific audience for themselves. So if you do like certain things represented more graphically, then smutty romances could be your thing. You do have other timeline based romances as well, such as Victorian romance or Regency romance and erotica as well. So those are basically the subgenres if I talk about romance fiction. The next subgenre includes folklore, that basically has stories around traditional values and cultural beliefs, etc., that are passed down generations over generations. These are further categorized into different tropes, mainly around legends, fairy tales, mythologies, as well as fables. Now, legends are something that involve a story around certain heroic aspects or heroic figures back in their history. Then there are mythologies, which are related mostly around some godly figures that are sacred to certain cultures, and then there are fables that are basically short stories around these. And the final category within the fiction genre is gothic, which involves any and everything. When you talk about supernatural, those could be vampires, witches, ghosts, horror books, paranormal related activities, paranormal investigations, etc. Everything basically encompasses in this Gothic module. And with that, we conclude the fiction genre. Next up, we have non-fiction genre, which basically, as the name suggests, presents to you information or stories based on certain real-life events, and the information that are provided to you in these books can be verified according to certain accounts and events, and that is why in non-fiction books, the author primarily aims to share certain level of education, information, and insights to you. Now, within nonfiction, we do have autobiographies, which is basically the story of a person's life written by themselves. Then we have biographies, which is the story of a real life person written by someone else. Then you do have memoirs, which is the story of a particular incident in a person's life that seems to be really inspirational and worth sharing with others. Then you also have narratives, which basically include essays, humorous and information related texts. Then there are subjective texts that are specifically around a particular subject like history, geography, science, atlas, etc. Then there are also reference related books that could be called as encyclopedias, cookbooks, design related books, architecture related books. Our next genre, poetries, are usually used to create vivid imaginations by the use of language in an artistic format. Now, poetries are mainly categorized into three forms, which is lyrical, narrative, or dramatic. Lyrical being the ones where the lyrics are in a rhyming format. A good example of that would be Shakespeare's sonnets. Then there are narrative formats, for which I think The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe would be a great example, where there is a story presented to you in the form of poem, and then there is dramatic, which actually creates a dramatic effect. I think William Shakespeare and William Wordsworth have some really good dramatic pieces for you to check out. Now, even aside from these, based on the structure of poetries are further characterized into a lot many more formats, such as the haiku Japanese format and many other formats that I can keep going on and on. And if you're interested, I would do a separate video on these characterizations too for you. It was really getting dark outside, so I had to switch on the light. So, just keeping the change in the lighting aside, let's move ahead. Apart from the genre classification, our next category would be the age classification. Based on the ages of people, these are the categorizations that the book writers usually go through, starting off with board books, picture books, early readers, middle grades, YA, and then moving ahead to the adult category. These are all the age groups that can be further categorized and added along with your genre classification to check out what you read. Now, in no way are these age groups relevant to what kind of book you want to read. You can read any and every kind of book below your age category. So if you are an adult, you are free to read even board books for that matter, as well as YA and middle grade. Just read any and every kind of book and try to explore what categories really, capture your heart into the reading. Moving ahead to our next categorization, the themes, also known as tropes that a particular book may present. These are usually things that are evident as a theme throughout the story. A good few examples of these would be dark academia, which is really trending and one of my favorite themes to experience in a book. A few other common themes that I've read recently are coming of age, smutty books, then there is LGBTQ plus representation, there is patriotism, heroism, war, peace, etc. I think there are a lot of literature related devices that are put into books, and you can even classify them based on the literature devices that the book uses, such as irony, humor, satire, etc. And there you have it, a quick guide around the book diversification and categorization, including genres, age groups, and all other things that I could possibly think of. I really hope that this video has shed some light around the wonderful world of books that are currently there at your disposal, and you're able to make up your mind around the best kind of book that you should read up next. And just remember that These genres are not just some way of confining the kind of books that you should read, but instead treat them as an array of possibilities that you could explore. I really hope that this video has been helpful for you in navigating through the choices and deciding what's your next reading adventure going to be. So I will take your leave and catch up with you in my next video. Until then, keep your coffees warm and your TBRs long. Goodbye.